Welcome to the Teaching Value in Healthcare Learning Network. Come join us to hear leaders in the field share practical and tangible advice about how to develop engaging curriculum and health system innovation to train a new generation of healthcare providers from diverse specialties and professions skilled to deliver high-value care. With national concerns about rising healthcare costs, as well as overuse, underuse, and misuse of medical care, Costs of Care and the ABIM Foundation created the Learning Network as a space to share ideas, educational materials, and strategies in an open forum. Our goal is to discuss ways to get started, implement, and sustain feasible innovations in teaching and creating value at your institutions. I'm September Wallingford, the Director of Operations for Costs of Care and a registered nurse in Boston, Massachusetts, and I'll be moderating today's webinar. Today, we're talking with Stacy Frick, a registered nurse and clinical nurse leader at the VA Ann Arbor healthcare system. She's here to discuss the powerful impact an interprofessional team can have on value improvement. Hi, Stacy.
Hi, September, and hello, everybody else. I'm really excited to be here, and I appreciate the opportunity to talk about, the nursing role in quality improvement and sustainment. So thanks for having me.
Yeah, we're really excited to have you here. Yeah. I think it might be helpful if we could just start by you telling us a little bit of your background and how you came into your current role.
Yeah, sure, absolutely. So I am a registered nurse in Ann Arbor, Michigan. I actually work for the Veterans Affairs Hospital in Ann Arbor. We are affiliated with the University of Michigan Hospital. I spent my first 5.5 years as a registered nurse, as a staff nurse on the telemetry floor in the VA hospital. During that time, I went back and got my master's degree in clinical nurse leadership, which you mentioned earlier. Once I completed that, I spent 3 years on the telemetry unit acting as the clinical nurse leader. And for those of you who don't know what that is, it's a lateral leadership position. My studies were basically it was a generalized degree. And so it's a way to get master's prepared nurses back at the bedside. And so when there's clinical issues that happen, high acuity situations, there's a master's prepared nurse that's there that can help the staff nurses walk through the steps that they need to take. In addition to acute patients, my duties were also to monitor quality on the unit and to do any type of quality improvement projects, to lead those projects. And then in February of 2016, I actually took a brand new role in the hospital that I'm very excited about. My title is now the Quality Improvement Coordinator for the Medicine Department. And this position, it is a nursing position, but it was created by the Chief of Medicine, Dr. Sanjay Saint. And his purpose in creating this is that while our hospital we have a quality management program that oversees things that OIG may want from the hospital, that Joint Commission may want from the hospital. But he really created this position so that we could have a boots on the ground quality improvement person going into the units, understanding the culture, understanding the staff, and able to make the changes where those changes needed to be made. And I was actually talking to him about this webinar, and I asked him, what made you create this? What made you want to nurse in this role? And his words were that the key to quality is nursing. And so he felt very passionate that it needed to be a nurse in this quality improvement coordinator role. So that's what I've been doing since February.
Yeah. Sounds like a really exciting position and incredibly important,
yes.
Especially in the quality improvement world. And as we start to move into the value-based healthcare world, a really important role for value improvement.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And, we want to talk about the interprofessional team, and there's so much value in tapping into the expertise of various members of the interprofessional team, specifically nurses who have this incredible frontline expertise We're the clinicians who are able to spend the most time on the front lines with the patients and families, really understanding the nuances and really being able to stay grounded in the realities of what seems to work and what doesn't seem to work. And we can really offer these unique insights into various projects. So I was hoping you could talk about any value improvement projects that you've been a part of or your nurses have been a part of.
Yeah, so actually I have one specific project that I had in mind. It was started by a physician, which is great. It doesn't matter who comes up with the idea. And this project it actually went incredibly smoothly for as far as my experience with quality improvement projects. This one went really well, and so I thought it would be a great one to describe for you guys. So the project that I'm talking about it was the appropriate utilization of telemetry within the hospital system. So as you all know, telemetry is an often overutilized resource. It's very expensive. Patients don't like having it on. And what we were finding at our facility is that we were ordering telemetry and then it would just stay on for the duration of the patient's admission until they were discharged. And we had really no way of determining when an appropriate time to remove the telemetry would be. So Dr. Chris Petrilli, he at the time was one of our chief medical residents at the VA, came up with an idea. He went to the AHA guidelines. He determined that the best course of action for us would be when a patient would need to be removed from telemetry. So that's kind of the overarching idea of the project. And so my goal for this webinar is to kind of walk you through the 3 stages of what I think are important for relationships in engaging nursing and the frontline staff in these projects. So the first stage of the process would be before you even think of the quality improvement project or at the initiation. And in that stage, really it's best to have a friend before you need one. And so what I mean by that is forming relationships and how important it is that when you work between disciplines, everybody understands that there's mutual respect. You care for the other person as a professional that you work with, day to day, and you cultivate those relationships. So in Dr. Petrilli's case, he had been a resident in our facility, and he had really made efforts to engage the nursing staff in the care of all of his patients. Unit. He would introduce himself to people. He would talk about what the plan is for the day. He would ask if they had any questions or any input. And this is the way he lived his work life. And so why that's important is because when he came to the nursing staff on the telemetry unit and said, I have this really important quality improvement project, the nurses believed in him, and they knew that he had their best interest in mind, and they knew that he would include them in the process. And so that's where that relationship really comes into play. The next phase I would call would be during the planning and action phase of the quality improvement project. And for that, it's about mutual understanding and the idea that the data will set you free. And what I mean by that is, it's understanding each other's roles. So with the telemetry project, Chris brought together a multidisciplinary meeting, several of them, that included the nursing leadership on the units, the education on the units, the education staff, as well as the staff nurses, and then himself, and then he brought in additional physician staff as well. And the point of these meetings was not for him to just tell the nursing staff, this is the plan and this is how you're going to execute it, and so go do it. It was really to get a mutual understanding of what is our role in this process, what is your current role in this process, and also let me show you the evidence. I think one thing that is really important is that both nursing and physicians are driven by evidence. And sometimes we don't think about the other profession, but nurses really want to know if I'm doing this, why am I doing this? My passion is to do what is best for the patient. And so tell me the evidence, show me the evidence, show me the data, show me that right now we're not following evidence-based practice. And that way the nurses feel like, okay, I can get behind this and I can do it because you're showing me that this is the best thing for our patients. And that's what I want ultimately. And then in addition to that is, what are we doing as a facility? So let's walk through together from the beginning of the process to the end of the process and really have a full understanding of the work that is being done by each party involved. And then the final stage, or the maintenance phase, so after everything is done, would really be the idea of co-ownership, and that quality improvement is a team sport. And so it's not just, we've created this project and here you go, now you own it, it's your responsibility. If it fails, it's your fault. It's the idea that we all created this together and we all have ownership of patient outcomes. And so let's continue to communicate and talk together and understand and discuss things that are going really well with this process and maybe things that are not going so well. So those are really the three phases that I see as important in quality improvement in engaging the frontline staff.
Absolutely. And it seems very robust. And I think that what you mentioned is one of the keys is that, communication and that mutual respect, and that we're in this together to be able to follow the evidence, but also having the patient's best interest in mind as well. So I think that's really important. I was wondering if you could talk about some of the challenges that you faced with this particular project.
Yeah, absolutely. So immediately people hear change and they think, no, we know our work, we come in, we have already planned what our day is going to look like. It works really well for us. I don't see any problems. And so why would I want to change? And that, I think, it's normal, it's natural, but that's definitely the biggest hurdle that we had to overcome. And thankfully, we had really strong nursing leadership and physician leadership in this. And it goes back to that sharing of the evidence. So one of the things that was apprehensive for the nurses is that they had actually worked really hard. Our telemetry room, central monitor room, is staffed by the nurses. And so they created their workflow initially when we opened this central monitor room. And so really they had just gotten it to a point where they felt very comfortable. And so when a physician came in and said, we want you to change it, it was really hard to accept that. But it was all about the open communication. So it wasn't just, you're going to do this now. It was, we're going to give you time to figure out how this best works into your workflow so that you can understand the process. The other part was sometimes when leadership, organizational leadership or physician leadership, people who don't work on the floor come in, they think, well, it's probably easiest just to do a once over, change everything all at once and then it's fine. And so the nurses really had a problem with that because they said, we don't feel safe doing a change in such a big way like that. And so they verbalized the idea that, hey, why don't we try just a trial? We have 5 different medicine teams. Why don't we try one medicine team with this new way to help us feel comfortable and safe with the new model and method? And then if it works well, then we'll be willing to kind of let go of that control of the other workflow and take this one all the way. So I think I think that's the biggest hurdle, is accepting the idea that your workday is going to change, and so the need to feel safe in what you're going to be doing.
Yeah, and it's incredible because you've given us some pretty concrete steps and advice. And I think that, with the Choosing Wisely lists, that, with this process, you could almost take any recommendation from any of the societies, kind of like Chris seems to have done with the Society of Hospital Medicine's telemetry monitoring, and really mobilize an interprofessional team and start a value improvement project from the ground up. that's going to be successful. So you've kind of mentioned some things, but what ultimate advice would you have for physicians, medical educators, health system leaders who are looking to engage nurses at the beginning?
Yeah. So September, I think you mentioned it kind of in the introduction, how staff nurses, they are the frontline people. They know the practicality of the processes. They know what works well. They know what doesn't work well. They know what patients need. And so I think for organizational leadership and physicians coming in, knowing that your nurses are your organizational experts. They can make life a lot easier for you, and they really understand the inner workings of how the hospital works, how patients work. And so taking the time to just talk with nurses and say, I have this great idea. This is why I want to do it. Let me tell you how this is going to make your patients' outcomes better. Now I would like to step back and hear what you have to say about it and how you think it might work. So really understanding, like, these are the people that know how to get the work done, and respecting that. Another thing is that, registered nurses are driven by evidence-based practice. In our education these days, that's part of how all nurses come in, go through college, go through their education. It's built and based on evidence-based practice. And so knowing that drives us too, I think is a big part, and knowing that we really want to hear that evidence. We really want to hear what is the cutting edge things that are happening. And we have a passion to be a part of that as well. And then relationships. I think that oftentimes we take for granted our interpersonal relationship skills, and we can't. The people we work with, 5 days a week or 3 12s in a row, or whatever it happens to be in your workplace. And those relationships, having mutual trust, having respect, having professional respect for each other, those are important beyond words, and more important than how you actually go through the steps of completing a process, because it starts with needing to trust one another. And if you don't have that, you're not ever going to be able to move past step one or phase one. People need to feel and experience that we all have the best interest in mind of the patient and for one another.
Yeah. And I think that's great. And the point you bring up about, physicians or other members of the team who want to start a project and taking it maybe to the front lines where the nurses are, and asking them, how do you see this working? I think it's important too, for anybody who's looking for a project, to just walk onto a unit, walk into a setting, find a nurse and ask them, what are we doing that's wasteful? What are we doing that's unnecessary? And from all of the experience that we have, we can do 6 things that we love to see change. So you could even create projects if you're looking at, just by going and talking with the staff who's providing that care. So I think that's a great point you make, to ask the nurses and talk to the nurses.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
So is there anything as we kind of wrap up that you'd like to say? Any final thoughts?
No, I mean, like I said, I really appreciate you having me here. My passion is improving processes through the relationships that we develop within the hospital systems, between our professions and between the relationships that we have with our patients. And I know this is being aired later, but I do have to say, working for the VA, happy Veterans Day to all of the veterans out there. Thank you to those who are currently serving and those men and women who have served in the past. So, yeah.
Great. Well, thank you to everyone who's listening and watching, and a special thank you to Stacy. And please join us next month as we'll be talking to Dr. Sachin Jain, and we look forward to everybody listening. Thank you.